these people calling for unity on both sides. I see a uniparty. I see a Republican establishment and Democrat establishment. It's the same damn people, right? They make you think they're different. They fight against each other, but they're the same damn people. The same people that are inflating our money supply. They're the same people that are funding the wars in Ukraine. They're doing things against the America First agenda, okay? So that's the uniparty. And these are the people that want to call for unity. And I'm actually a little worried. I think we should be unified that violence doesn't belong in Minnesota or in United States politics. I think we could be unified that assassinations aren't good, right? But we're not going to be unified on their agenda of ripping off the American people, keeping a porous border, and all the other bullshit they're doing, sending our money over to Ukraine. And that's what I see. And so in Minnesota, unfortunately, and we've talked about this on the show, the MAGA movement, I'm not going to say that, the Donald Trump for president campaign has been hijacked basically by a globalist rhino. His name's Tom Emmer. He's a sitting congressman from Congressional District 6, one of the most conservative districts in Minnesota. And am I just making up a globalist rhino? I don't know. I feel like someone else called him a globalist rhino. Who was that, Tushy? You're into politics. Someone called him a globalist rhino once, right?
Trump.
There you go.
Called him
Okay,
the globalist rhino.
The guy running Trump's campaign in Minnesota is Tom Emmer, the globalist rhino, the guy that's funding this budget deficit, printing money out thin air. What are you doing over there?
I had to get these comments on here. It's beautiful. So, Wheezy Mama.
He's ruining my transition.
Yep.
Wheezy Mama says, I do not want tushy sauce. And Love Minnesota says, Wheezy Mama TMI. Bill Dangspen says, word on the street is that the ladies love tushy sauce. Wings says, wow. And Wheezy Mama says, I'll pass. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, how do you eat it?
What, beaver? What are you asking, Whiskey
Hey man,
Tango
I was on the floor
Foxtrot?
when that happened. We were talking about eating beaver.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that was good times.
That senator's crazy.
I think so.
Yeah, he was affiliated with those Action for Liberty people.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to transition. I had this plan, and you guys are ruining it. Marty, 1967. I think that's a new person. Let's not forget the gun grab they're going to try. I don't know about that. That's a great. Maybe we'll talk about that in the post show. Okay, I really want to get to the story. Pull this up. This is on Truth
We can
Hurts.
talk about the Liberty
Shut
sauce.
up! Shut up! I'm doing my transition. Shut up! All right, this is E1. This is from TruthHurtsNews.com. Don't you dare, Tushy. Don't you dare to ruin my transition. Transitioning is an important part in a person's life, Tushy, and you're ruining it.
Wait, is that what David Hughes is on the show for? What's going on with this?
And you're really hurting Dave Hughes, who really hasn't been a part of the show. This is why
makes sense here.
This is why we had Dave Hughes on the show. It's like, why do we have Dave Hughes on the show? Because he's going to talk about quid pro quo or them trying to buy him up. All right, so anyhow, Tom Emmer running Trump's Minnesota campaign. The globalist rhino Tom Emmer running it, but there's a little bit more to the story. So Saturday morning, we wake up to the story. You probably heard before most of us.
I knew Friday night.
Okay, yes. I know select few heard Friday night that Tayler Rahm, the endorsed Republican candidate in CD2, is dropping or is suspending his campaign. He's essentially dropping out of the race, although he's going to be on the ballot anyhow. And this is a guy that's loved by a lot of grassroots Republicans. You're in a position in CD2. You're like a deputy or something like that. Or why are you giving me that look? Can we not say that?
What?
It's in public. You're
We're
a deputy.
we're back to this again. I'm just looking at you talk.
Oh, okay. It's been a while. Well, you're like a deputy chair with the
I'm the
CD2.
deputy chair, yes.
So you've probably done work to help try to get Tayler Rahm elected, right?
Not nearly as much as a lot of people.
You've done some work, right?
Yeah, but
and there are some people that have done a lot of work.
There are dozen, maybe, I don't know,
I'd say
30,
about
40 people.
30 people that have probably put in, collectively
Every
at
waking
least
moment.
every minute they feel like they're doing Rahm campaign stuff.
Yeah.
There you go. He won the endorsement first ballot against a guy who's basically carpetbagged into the district, who's literally a Tom Emmer guy. Won it by, what was the percentage?
74%.
So very strongly
First
loved.
ballot.
And so this article, less than 24 hours ago, volunteers, activists, paid staffers, and unpaid members of the Minnesota Congressional District 2 GOP working to help get their endorsed candidate Tayler Rahm across the finish line in the August 13th primary against Tom Emmer back candidate Joe Tyreb. T-Rab, Lying Rab. Isn't that what you guys call them?
Lyrab.
Lyrab. And they hoped all that work would go towards defeating leftist Angie Craig in November. By the way, the reason this matters is a Democrat, Angie Craig, is in this district, and it's the biggest targeted district in it's definitely Minnesota, maybe even in the upper Midwest. It's a big district. They think they can win it back, okay? Jason Lewis was in this district, won it in 2016 and lost in 2018. All right, and this is Saturday morning. These same great patriots who gave their time and money over the last several months to support Rahm learned that Rahm quit on them by suspending his campaign to take on the role as, quote, a senior advisor with Trump's Minnesota campaign. And I've chatted with many of these people, and I'm saying overwhelming people feel betrayed by him. And here's why. Tayler Rahm, he's a newcomer. He's never led a large-scale statewide campaign or been involved in politics in any grand capacity. It was part of the allure of his race in C2. The grassroots wanted an outsider. So why would Trump's campaign want him as an advisor and not on the campaign trail defeating Angie Craig? And this is where the story gets interesting. Okay. Emmer, as we know in this room, and maybe you guys at home, he has been growing his power and influence in the MNGOP to the point where I would just say he's running the MNGOP de facto, right? David Hand is a little beta male. He is basically doing everything Tom Emmer wants. I don't know any other explanation in Otter Tail County other than the fact that Tom Emmer wanted to protect Michelle Fischbach. It was the biggest threat to Michelle Fischbach's endorsement. And so he got David Hand to do his bidding. And I would allege that there was a lot more than just that, okay? But it's no doubt Tom Emmer just coordinated to get Donald Trump to come to Minnesota in May, and it literally bailed out all debt. David Hand couldn't raise jack shit. He was running the party on the ground. Tom Emmer gets Donald Trump to Minnesota in May, and they raise $1 million, and overnight the debt is wiped out. So literally, Tom Emmer de facto running the MNGOP. All right, now let's go back to this article. So it's not like Emmer doesn't want to have a candidate from the grassroots, which is what the perception was of Tayler Rahm. He doesn't want that in the most hotly contested district in Minnesota or even the upper Midwest, CD2. Scroll down. So he's got a candidate, Joe Lyrab, they call him, who I don't think lives in the district, or maybe he got an apartment there now. Who knows? You would know, Tucci.
He's got an apartment in Burnsville, I believe.
Okay, so he basically carpet bagged in there. He couldn't find a church parking lot to live in. Right, Tucci? All right, scroll down here. There's an FEC joint committee. So it's like, this was so obvious right there. This is Joe Tayrab's, filing paperwork. You see Joe Tayrab for Congress, and then it says designation of other authorized committee, and it's Emmer majority builders right there. Okay, so they're actually tied legally there on a report. So it's not just speculation that he is an Emmer guy. He is Emmer's guy. So here's the big thing. All of a sudden, Tayler Rahm, who has no grand organizing or campaign experience, drops out of the race to run to be the senior advisor to the Minnesota Trump campaign, which Tom Emmer would have been the one appointing him. And it's like, who is this guy with what? Like, why is he qualified for this position? And it just seems so obvious to anyone that has any ounce of understanding how politics work that he was bought off. And, there's actually a law here. This is Minnesota Statute 211B10. It says a person may not reward or promise to reward another in any manner to induce a person to be or refrain from or cease being a candidate. A person may not solicit or receive payment, promise, or reward from another for this purpose. Now, it's clear that that's what happened. Am I wrong on this? Do you guys read it the same way? Tucci? William?
It's a misdemeanor.
Why did you guys go
right?
quiet all of a sudden?
It's a misdemeanor.
I'm going to be honest, I zoned out for a second there.
Why? Because I didn't stick the transition well
they
enough?
don't-
Or?
if-
We're letting you enjoy your monologue over there because you're mad at us because we interrupted you too many times.
Oh, no, that's it?
If you don't,
Yeah,
if you
we're
don't
using
want,
violent
mad at you
rhetoric.
right now.
your
if you
violent
don't want
rhetoric is slowing us
politicians to
down.
pay to get people off the ballot, you can't make it a misdemeanor. I mean, why do they care about a misdemeanor?
Right. It is a
Oh,
misdemeanor.
yeah. I got in trouble for this on
I guess somebody
Twitter.
might-
I reposted. I got in a few arguments yesterday on Twitter. It's not something I like doing.
It was
I'm not
your
proud
socks
of it.
and Crocs or what?
Yeah, this is something that I'll fight on. No, it was about the Tayler Rahm, Tayrab stuff, and I mean, part of it was whether or not we can even question a crime has been committed here. But the other part of it was,
What do you mean if we can question a crime was committed?
well, there are all these people out there saying, "Oh, this is completely and utterly ridiculous. What law would have been broken? How dare you accuse your
211B10.
candidate, Tayler Rahm, of breaking the law?" Which nobody's
Actually,
doing here.
in this, it's alleging Emmer or whoever gave him
Right.
this position.
No, exactly. But of
campaign
course they're
team.
gonna
Yeah.
hit you with of course.
I mean, listen, I don't think they'll get prosecuted for it, and they probably can't even prove in court. And even if they did, you're right, it's a misdemeanor, right?
Yeah, I mean, if Emmer's still a lawyer, he might lose his license. I don't know, but other than that, misdemeanor, right? It's not going to end him in jail or prison or anything.
Right.
Well, and Taylor's clearly on board with it, so I don't think anything's gonna happen here.
Right. But the point
Well,
is,
no, you could ask Keith Ellison to investigate.
the point is, it's so clear to anyone that understands Tayler Rahm. He's not like this political guru. He's not like some genius. Like if they got tapped like some guy that won, I don't know, Palenti's 2006 gubernatorial re-election, people go, yeah, the guy knows how to win statewide, right? Who's Tayler Rahm to be appointed the statewide senior advisor position?
Well,
So,
the
if this, let me just ask this question. Would this even happen if Tayler Rahm wasn't on the ballot? Would this even happen if Tayler Rahm just won the primary? Would they have done this?
No.
It's so clear the timing of this. He clearly was doing very well. You door knocking CD2. Was Tayler Rahm doing well?
he was absolutely winning. This proves that he's winning. That's why they did it. Of course.
Of course.
He was winning.
On this show, we're not going to pretend like we don't know what's going on
There's
here.
polling
That's
that
exactly
shows
what
he
they
was winning,
did.
but he's definitely was winning. I mean, I've knocked so many doors. I have all the records from everybody that knocked all the doors. It's like he was kicking Lyrab's butt.
Okay, so let's bring in Dave
Truth
Hughes. Dave,
Seeker
oh, go ahead. No, let's bring in-
0450 says, will Emmer publicly back the endorsed Royce White? Bill Dingsman says, now that Rahm has suspended his campaign in CD2, the voters will have to choose between a carpet bagger and a carpet muncher.
Yeah. Okay. Let's
Okay.
let's go to Dave Hughes.
All right.
Thank you for waiting patiently, Dave. So, are we just crazy here? Do they try to buy people off? You ran for Congress. You actually got Trump's endorsement in is it 2016 or 2018?
2018.
Okay, so you got Trump's endorsement. You ran against Michelle Fischbach in 2020, who's now the sitting congresswoman. What is your story? What did you see? What happened to you?
Well, Jake and guys, great to be with you. After I heard the Rahm story yesterday morning, I was shocked and very disappointed, very upset because I know how hard people in that district were working for him to help him beat Angie Craig. But reading that article and the offer of the position and so forth, it refreshed my memory that the same thing happened to me in 2020. You already mentioned that I ran for Congress in 16 and 18, and in both those races, I got progressively closer to defeating the Democrat incumbent at the time. And in 2020, the establishment didn't want me to win. Third time's the charm. I was the front runner, unquestionably. I had done the hard work those previous two cycles, and so the delegates really, really liked me. And Michelle Fischbach announced in September of 19 that she was running. So she was challenging me and the three other folks in the race. Well, on March 5th, I had to go back and look at my texts to confirm this, but on March 5th of 2020, about 2 months before the May 2nd, 2020 CD7 endorsing convention, at that time in March, I was, I don't think anybody would question I was the front runner. Michelle had the Trump endorsement by then, but my sense of it was that the delegates were still with me. And so on March 5th of 2020, I won't name the person, but a Tom Emmer lieutenant, former staffer, whether it was official staff, campaign staff, doesn't matter to me, but a definite lieutenant of Tom Emmer asked to meet with me to convince me to drop out of the race because he thought that the writing was on the wall that, with the Trump endorsement for Michelle in 2020 that there's no way I was going to prevail. So why stick it out? Instead, let's have you drop out, make it easy, and earn the graces of the powers that be. Keep in mind that people weren't named, but that's the way it was phrased. So on March 5th, I had dinner with this person. He wanted my wife to attend I guess, to put the pressure on by having us both there, but she refused because she wouldn't have any part of this. We knew in advance that it was an appeal for me to drop out. Well, at the meeting, it was just me one-on-one. I didn't record it. I wish now that I had. But at the meeting, two things happened, Jake. One, a threat, and number two, an offer. So it was the flip side.
Can you explain what the threat is?
Yeah, it was the flip side of the same coin is the way I view it. The threat was, Dave, if you don't drop out, this person said, I'm here as a friend. I'm not going to do anything to you, but the people that have sent me, and again, he didn't name them, but I've already told you who he used to work for. The people that I work for will ruin you, will do everything they can to destroy you. And oh, by the way, since you're a civilian contractor to government contracts, federal government contracts, those contracts go away. So he threatened my employment. He threatened me. He threatened my good name in Minnesota politics. He threatened my family. All rather vague, Jake, but as direct as I've just told you, especially the part about the job. Mm-hmm. The flip side of the coin then, after saying that thing and letting me sit there for a minute and think about it, the flip side was, but Dave, if you drop out, we can find something for you. It wasn't as specific as this reported offer to Tayler Rahm of this senior advisor position. Wasn't that specific, Jake, but it was, hey, we'll find something for you that's, prestigious and we'll pay something. Both prestige and pay were part of the vague offer.
Yeah, and Action for Liberty teaches in their class that there's a list of things that they do when you're not complicit. And first they just ignore you, and then if you're too big to be ignored, then they try to reason with you. It's why if you ever hear of a politician, if you're like leading something, they go, "Hey, come to my office. I want to have a meeting with you." It's because they want to segregate you from the group so they can try to reason with you. Listen, I'm really on your side, but you don't know the political reality is this. Then they actually threaten you. Okay, and a lot of us have been in politics, have had that happen to us, and it's happened to me many times. And then they try buying you off, right? And then if you resist all these things, eventually what happens is they have to come your way. So these guys, they just want a monopoly on politics. What you're saying, and I really appreciate you telling the story, Dave, it is just exactly what happened with Carrie Lake, and it's actually in this article. You could see it, but she made headlines earlier this year when she had a recording. She had the wherewithal to actually record it. And it was the Republican chair who he actually resigned after this, but Arizona Republican chair saying that there are people, in D.C., big guys that want her out of the race. We'll find something for you, like a board position. That's what they do. They find you like a board position, something nice, maybe something outside of politics, or a senior advisor to the Trump campaign, even though you've never run a statewide organization. Okay. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to find you a nice little place, nice little cushion salary, just so you get out of the way so that they get their objective. They obviously didn't want Carrie Lake running for Senate in Minnesota. I'll give you another example. Tom DePel, you and I both know this. Tom DePel was threatened by the Senate Victory Fund. Do you know this story? You probably know the story, Liskey. These are your people. These are your cohorts. They threatened Tom DePel, and they said, if you don't drop out of this race, even though he was an endorsed Republican candidate, this is in 2022, if you don't drop out of this race, there's going to be a campaign finance complaint against you. And they had this thing teed up, and it was bullshit. It was fabricated. It actually involved William and Action for Liberty. It was completely fabricated. It ended up getting dismissed. It actually went into an investigation, then got dismissed.
Hold on. First, it was only a threat. After the election, they punished Tom anyway, I think for losing. Or to keep him out of politics entirely, I don't know.
Yeah,
but they introduced the complaint after the election, and it was pretty quickly dismissed.
But they actually really did have this thing teed up and ready to go, so it wasn't like a complete bullshit. They actually had this threat, and they used it against them.
I remember. Excuse me for interrupting. I remember at the doors because I was knocking. Thank you. I remember knocking at the doors for the primary because Tom was going up against a primary challenger, and this was the stuff that the Senate Victory Fund volunteers were spreading. They were saying, oh, yeah, well, Tom has a campaign finance complaint against him.
That's right.
He's accepting illegal corporate contributions, so he's no good. At this point, they hadn't filed the complaint, but they had it teed up, like you said.
Yeah.
I ran into similar things when I was door knocking for Senator Wiesenberg in his three-way primary, and there was someone in Pike Creek Township, Nate's own precinct, that said, oh, well, I don't know about Nate. I mean, I think he's going to end up. I hear he's going to end up in prison with Jake Duesenberg for all of their whatever, literally. And I told Nate about that. But no, for real, that's what kind of BS that these people were spreading, right? And it's like Nate's going to end up in prison with Jake Duesenberg.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, and well, there was a hate page online.
Oh yeah,
too.
I got subpoenaed when I was president. Actually, I got subpoenaed by Campaign Finance Board. Yeah, they wanted. I mean, two different things. And by the way, once these investigations, one lasted a year and a half, found nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. I've never actually, that I could think of, been bought off. So I don't know why I've never made it to that stage. They just stick around in that threatening stage. But you can't quit. That's why, like Trump, putting that fist up, fight, right? You got to continue on. Dave, anything else here? I really appreciate you sharing the story.
No, I just, I came forward because I wanted you guys to know that it appears that this is a pattern.
Yeah.
I mean, you have my experience 4 years ago. You now have the Tayler Rahm thing, and who knows what else has been going on. But this Emmer Empire thing is a clear pattern.
Yep, definitely. And by the way, I mean, like, Emmer just keeps spreading his power and influence over the MNGOP, even though a lot of people in the grassroots absolutely despise this guy because they actually listen to Trump. He was a globalist rhino. Well, thanks very much for joining there, Dave.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so Bill, you wanted to come on the show because you're one of those guys that went around in your community talking about Tayler Rahm. Many people believed in this guy, and then he just up and bails on everyone. You guys actually wanted him elected and put time and effort into it.
Yeah, it was a pretty frustrating phone call Friday night. It started out with him talking about how excited of an opportunity he had, and I thought, okay, great. He started talking about Trump, and I thought, okay, maybe he's going to get the Trump endorsement, which is going to be a huge win. I mean, from what we know, obviously, we think he was in the lead in the polls. Some of the polling numbers that I've been told about, not that I've actually seen, so I don't want to get too far into those, but he was leading. And so the fact that he's leading is a huge indicator to me. And so I'm thinking, okay, maybe Trump called him up and said, hey, we're gonna endorse you. And he's the endorsed candidate, so that makes sense. And then the conversation changed really fast. He went from, I have something really important to tell you, it's really exciting news, and it turned into, right after that, well, I think I'm going to drop out of the race. And so at that time I was thinking, okay, well, he's thinking about it. Because he kind of described it as a thought process, and so I just said, wait a minute, Tayler, what's going on? Like, what do you mean you're going to drop out of the race? You're clearly, if you're in contact with Trump in any way, shape, or form, even if it's just his team, that's a win. That means you've become an important person,
right?
Like we've talked about, like you said about your classes. I attended one, and that was the first thing for me that was going off in my head. Like, hey, that's an indicator you're going somewhere. They're finally talking to you. That's a good thing in the way of politics. You want them talking about you and talking to you. And so in that way, I thought, okay, he's going to go that route of the endorsement. And then when he tells me, well, I'm going to drop out, and I immediately said, well, are you sure? That doesn't make any sense. And he said, yeah, I think I can make a better effect. And I truly believe that he does believe these things. He believes that he'll make a difference for Trump in the state of Minnesota by being the leader of this new position.
Really? Do you really believe that?
I think he does. Yeah, I think he does.
You think he's convinced himself?
Right. And it's not the same position as me believing that. Obviously, I have I literally, the immediate response to him was, don't do that. Like, that's the opposite of what we want you to do. If Trump really, truly believed that Tayler was winning and was doing a great job, we were talking about this before the show. My thought process is, well, if you're really doing a great job and you're rallying the grassroots, that means you're gaining people that probably had no intention of voting, or if they are going to vote, they're only going to vote because of you, not because of anybody else on the ticket. And that's something that I learned while I was out campaigning is, like, I got people that I spent an hour at their door. Normally you try and spend less than 5 minutes, but I sat for an hour talking to someone who said that they had no intention of voting until they got to talk to me. And so if you're really rallying grassroots, why would Trump knock you or offer you this position out of the campaign when your campaign would be the biggest rally for the grassroots? It just doesn't add up to me. And so something came out, he came out and said, well, I've already made the decision. And I just didn't know what to say. At that point I was like, I told him, I said, look, I just spent hours with you in my communities, taking you to people that honestly wouldn't necessarily vote Republican, but because of who I am and because of how I've described to myself and how I worked as more of a truth person, as we're focusing on this show, is like I want to represent the people. I'm not here to represent the party per se. I'm not here to represent any specific thing. I'm here to do as the people have asked me to do and serve the people truly. And so I said, that's what they were hoping you were going to do, Tayler. I guess I don't understand. And I'm introducing you to these people, and I'm getting people that willing to put up yard signs in the city of Northfield. You don't just walk into Northfield and get to put signs up. That's not how that works. It's just not.
Right.
That's not the community that does that.
Right.
And so 2 days before he calls me and tells me this, I'm getting signs up in Northfield, and I'm getting signs up in my other communities with community leaders that normally don't have any interest in politics. And so I had put all this time and effort into it, and now I have to go to events. I went to an event on Saturday knowing that he was dropping out, and had to explain to all these people, like, Taylor's dropped out. Because they asked me for yard signs. They're asking for signs. They're like, I saw you put one up at your office, at your house. Where's my sign? And I said, well, unfortunately, he quit. There aren't any more signs.
What is this? What is this? You put this in here, Dawson, or I'm sorry, William. Rahm parade pictures. What is this?
Oh, just to show you, because I think a lot of people have been arguing, at least in the Twitter world, that, oh, this was inevitable. He doesn't have any momentum. He doesn't have any support. But like what Bill said and what these pictures clearly show, yeah, he had support. He had people behind him. I think it was clear that he was leading.
There's no doubt.
Oh, and I know some of these people.
And the
there's
polls
some
say
patriots
it,
there.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's literal polls that have it, but I mean, I can say it, anecdotally, but also just looking at the numbers. Of course, when you're door knocking in your own Love, Minnesota, is Lyrab gay? Look at that! I just saw it on
$1.
$1.
$1. That's a barrier entry.
So the $1 question.
Jeez.
This has been speculated. It's speaking of talking to the voters, right? Talking to the voters. So this is why it's so heartbreaking to me. And I'll say that this idea that and somebody had commented here earlier, I think it was, let me see, Brad Ganser, Tayler Rahm has no grassroots support, none. Mort is the face of the grassroots in Minnesota. I mean, what really happened was Rahm was campaigning for pretty much the entirety of 2023. And I think, like most people, unless you were a congressional staffer or some type of a legislative assistant, to Kurt Dowd, a congressional person staffer or something like this, when you're all corrupt from the beginning, or you're like you've been in the legislature and gotten corrupted. Like most people that get in to run for Congress, maybe the exception of Darlene Miller, who was recruited by the Klein people, but most people that get in there to run, whether it's Kistner or whoever else that want to get in to run, their intentions are pure, right? They think that I'm going to get in there. I'm not corrupt. I'm just a regular person, and I want to do good. And I think that's what Rahm got in there to do good, but he didn't sign up to get in there and be the tip of the spear against the entire Washington establishment and nationwide GOP establishment, who gave his opponent $1.5 million, by the right. $2,000 a time. So I think the way that I kind of saw it was that in December, I was deer hunting in Wisconsin, and I got a call from somebody. It was like, hey, Lyrab, was just busted. He told 5 lies, and it's all on record, it's all recorded. I think perhaps maybe the secretary keeps minutes or something like that on a recorder, but that there's a BPOU meeting that happened, and it was like his very first thing after carpetbagging into the district. He started to go to these campaign, go to the Republican Party meetings, and that Lyrab, said that he lived in Burnsville, and there was people had already had screenshots of things online that showed that he owned a home in another district. And so they said, well, don't you own this home in this district? And it was like live that day online that he did. He said, no, that's a lie of the liberal media is just trying to smear me. I don't own a home in another district. And a delegate, or one of the delegates there at this meeting, said, well, I used to be a bouncer. And, if somebody says, well, I'm 21, but she looks like she's 17 or 18, we check their driver's license. We say, well, we can easily verify your ages. So can you get out your driver's license and show us where you live? You live in Burnsville, you said? Oh, well, I don't think I got my driver's license changed over yet. You know, so in other words, this guy owned a house in their district, says it's a lie of the media that he owns a house elsewhere, then he won't show his driver's license. And then I got this call. I was in Wisconsin. And I thought, well, you know, now it's going to be on in CD2, where for 16 years, since the 08 and 2012 Ron Paul campaigns, and then David Gerson in 14 and 16, this has been built up to the point where, like last August at the State Central Committee meeting in August, the rules vote to allow the Hand to be canned to fire David Hand was 29-5 in CD2, right? Everywhere else it was like less than 50-50. The vote was 29 yays to 5 nays in CD2 state central delegates. Like the grassroots are powerful in CD2 and large, and Morton, everybody else has been building this for years. And so when LIRAB carpetbagged into our district and started immediately lying to people about where he lives and everything, then people got on board with Taylor's campaign, not because Taylor was inspiring them, but because these establishment people, the Washington people, were corrupt, and
they could see that they were implanting this guy into the CD2 targeted district. And they saw it for what it was worth. I mean, he's literally on a joint fundraising committee.
Well, and wasn't his kickoff campaign like only 3 blocks from his original house? Not the Burnsville
yeah,
house.
he had a big fundraiser a few blocks from his original house. I guess he could walk
Right.
home and not risk a DUI or something. But he, and so Rahm just had to say, look, I'm from this district. I grew up here. I'm accountable to you. And everyone knew that he had, in fact, been in the district for a year campaigning. And when he met somebody, he remembered their name. They would LIRAB was coming to people say, "Oh, it's so good to meet you," and like somebody's like, "Look, I'm a CD2 officer and I've met you 3 times and you still don't remember me and say it's good to meet you," like screw you. So people wanted the local candidate. People really could see that Rahm was, he knew us, and he was going to represent the people in the district and not the and that Emmer's guy in this establishment. That's what built this into hundreds and hundreds of delegates. And probably 500 people voting Rahm slates in their BPUs, and 270 whatever delegates, and 74%, and all these huge groups of door knockers, right? So when right now him dropping out, or him taking this position of suspending his campaign, it's like this is when they offer him this position. Look at this grassroots army you built of 500 people. It's like they were there because basically when LIRAB came in there, he was, he set himself up as, I'm going to be for you, the people, and not Washington. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to be the tip of the spear. Like Trump saying, fight. This guy, I'm going to take it on. And he didn't sign up to do all that, but he had the basically the position almost like thrust upon him to say.
And he's got a responsibility to the people, and that's what's so damning about this. By the way, Love Minnesota, Ran sources say Ron Krisha has already shown LIRAB where the bathroom is. Scuba